Okay, this will be the first lecture video on the first math sheet that we'll do together in this course. This touches on a few basics. If you haven't read through section B4, that will be your math review and basics of introduction to carpentry. I suggest you read through that section before you start to attempt the math. So this sheet deals with a couple basic concepts. Starts out with how to calculate a perimeter. That's something that all of you should be comfortable with, but I'll go through it briefly. Okay, so problem 1 asks you what is the perimeter of figure A. So this really just has to do with adding the length of all the sides. In this situation, it's helpful to see that if you were to visualize this line coming out to the edge and this line coming out to the edge, what we have here is a rectangle. So technically we can just take the 24 multiplied by 2, and we can take the 28 multiplied by 2, and then add it all together, and then you get the total figure of the perimeter of the shape. For question 2, they're asking for the area. There are several ways to do this. And this will come into play when we start to deal with a lot of things like volumes of concrete. So a couple ways to do this. My preferred method I'll share with you. To calculate the area of this shape, I would like to visually break this into two rectangles. The first rectangle being the 20 and the 24, so you would multiply those two together to get the rectangle area for this shape. And then I would calculate this small rectangle shape, which ends up being, we have 11, so we know this side is 11. To find this side, we can take the full 28 here and subtract the 20 here, and we should realize that this would be 8. And we take the 8 multiplied by the 11. Now we have an area for this. Two areas, and we can just multiply them together. So that's fairly basic, but that's just to get your feet wet. 3 and 4 ask you to do the same thing, but it takes a little bit more involved. The perimeter of this shape, again, we can realize that if we pull all of these to the outside for the perimeter, we can add up a total figure for here, a total figure for here. And we can multiply this figure by 2, realizing that this side and this side are the same. And we can multiply this figure and this figure by 2. And then we add those two together and we'll get a total perimeter. Area is a little more complicated here. You can do it whatever way you're most comfortable with. My suggestion is to, again, break it up into, in this case, 3 rectangles. You'll have a big rectangle, and you'll have 2 small ones on the side. Multiply them together, get the area. If you can't remember the formulas, I will post a sheet, but you'll also find all those under section B4. Like I said, it's good for you to have that book open and review that before you tackle the sheet. Question 5 requires a little bit more thinking on your part. First thing to recognize is that we're dealing with a sidewalk here that's 5 feet wide all the way through. The concept remains the same. So if we're trying to figure out, in this case, just the area, we can chop this up into whatever you like. That's personal preference as far as how you want to calculate the area. My suggestion, probably chop it up here, chop it up here, chop it up here, figure out what that would be once you minus 5 feet of width here and here, and then calculate the area of 4 different rectangles and put them all together. And here we have a bit of reading the tape measure. Again, something you'll find under section B4, how to read a tape measure. I will be posting some sheets on that. I would like you to fill them out and send your answers back to me. But basically, the way we divide up an inch is multiples of 8, 4. So, for instance, so between the 1 inch mark and the 2 inch mark, we have all these hash marks, and this is going to be critical for you to learn how to read the tape measure properly if you don't know already. So recognizing that the longest line between the 1 inch mark and the 2 inch mark is the halfway point, we can say that this is 1.5 inches. Okay. Recognizing that if we break the inch up into 4 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the next longest lines are our 1/4 inch marks, the half being also a 1/4 inch mark, and so on and so forth. We want to break them up into 8ths. We go to the next longest line and then down into finally into 16ths, which is as far as we really want to take it. Typically carpentry will go into down to the 32nd, but that's more into finished carpentry and cabinet making. So we'll stick to 16ths as the smallest unit of an inch that we're going to worry about with this course. So in this case here, we can see that the arrow A is pointing to this line here. And if we realize that these are the 8ths marks, because the inch is broken up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 eighths, then we should be able to recognize that this is at the 7/8 mark. So the answer to A would be 7/8 of an inch. So I'd like you to try all these and get comfortable with that.